Okay, so in our previous session, we have seen the planning. The planning data will be updated in a table, separate table called AC ACDOCP. And basically, in order to upload the planning, we will have to use Fiori. There is no transaction code for updating, for uploading the data, planning data. So we have seen that part. Okay, let's jump on to the controlling. Within that, we will see cost element accounting. So while I was discussing, I was explaining, about the GL and you know the cost element thing. So if you see, if you look at the finance, this is what finance, and let's say this is our controlling. And here we will have general ledgers. Okay, nothing but accounts, GL accounts. Okay, so this is finance and this is controlling, right? In GL, we may have asset GLs, liability GLs, income GLs, and expense GLs, right? Now, expenses incomes are required in the controlling. Assets and liabilities are not required in the controlling. Why? Because there is no control on these. So we cannot control these expenses or whatever we call it as. Suppose I want to buy a machinery with 10 lakhs. So I will have to buy $1 million of machinery. So there is no second thought on that. I can, in the market, we will have 3,000, 300,000, 400,000, and so on and so forth. But still, we will be going for $1 million because that machinery gives us more productivity, more output. So that way, we don't have, absolutely, we don't have any control on the assets and liabilities, assets and liabilities, but we have a control on these. So because of that, incomes and expenses are required in the controlling. So incomes and expenses are called GL accounts in finance, and the moment these get into the controlling, those are considered as a cost element. Now, how the system will consider these GLs as cost elements here in controlling, we have a concept called cost, we have a concept called category, cost element category. Okay, so cost element category, based on this cost element category, system understands that those transactions are to be replicated in the controlling module also. So at the time of creating the GL master, we will require to enter this category, and system understands based on this that these amounts are to be tracked in controlling. So this, based on the cost element category, system will take the data from finance into controlling. So when you assign the cost element category, system will consider that as a cost element. System will consider that as a cost element. Within the cost element, we have two cost elements, primary cost elements and secondary cost elements. Okay, what are primary cost elements and what are secondary cost elements? Primary cost elements are those GLs which have an impact in finance. It means the GLs which we are considering in finance while posting, and those GLs will get updated in controlling, and those GLs are considered as a primary cost elements. It means all incomes and expenses which are created with the cost element category, and when we post any transaction to any of these GLs, those GLs are nothing but cost elements, nothing but primary cost elements in controlling. It means in the case of primary cost element, we require a finance transaction. Okay, we need a finance transaction, we need a base transaction in finance, and that will get updated in controlling. That is what we call it as primary cost element. And all those cost elements, all those GL accounts are considered as primary cost elements. And secondary cost elements, there is a change in the new versions. Earlier, we used to create secondary cost elements in controlling area only, directly in controlling area. Primary cost element, there is no change in the primary cost element. It requires a GL account, and based on the cost element category, system understands it is a primary cost element or secondary cost element. Basically, we require a GL account in this case. Now, in the case of secondary cost elements, we used to create those secondary cost elements in the controlling directly. But in the latest versions, we do require a GL in finance in order to have secondary cost element in controlling. So as I said, how do we know whether it is a primary cost element or secondary cost elements? Based on the cost element category, system understands whether it is a primary cost elements or secondary cost elements. So far, we have been seeing the primary cost elements 1, 11, and of course 12. What is 1? 1 is for all expenses. 11 for revenues. And what is for 12? It is for sales discounts. Of course, this is kind of an expenditure, but we are reducing the sales discounts from the revenue. So because of that, we have got a separate category called 12. So we used to consider these two typically, and there is another one called sales discounts. It is 12. So when you consider cost element category other than these, all those are considered as the secondary cost elements. For example, 41 category, it is for overheads. 42 for assessments. 42 for assessments. 43 for activity activity types. And similarly, we have few more. We will discuss them little later, 21, 22, which are important that we will discuss during the. So typically, for example, we can consider these three. These three will be considered in our product costing. In our product costing, we will be considering these three. Okay, so apart from these three, if at all we are considering any other cost element category, all those cost element categories are considered as a secondary cost elements. So the basic difference between ECC and S4, secondary cost elements also do require a GL in finance. It was not the case in the earlier versions, even it means until ECC. Okay, so that's the basic difference between ECC and S4. Primary cost element is going to be the same. There is no change in the primary cost element. It's the same. Okay, now primary cost elements, as I said, right, the moment we post any transactions to these incomes and expenses, and when these GLs are created with cost element category, all those transactions will get replicated in the controlling. So basically for primary cost elements, the transaction is required to be posted in finance, and the same thing will get updated in controlling. That is in the case of primary cost element. And how about secondary cost elements? You might have observed while posting the transactions, we used to consider one CO object. It's called controlling objects. It means when you are posting a transaction using an expenses GL, let's say The same GL is created with cost element category. The GL, let's say 4 lakhs is the GL, and this is the same is considered as a cost element in controlling. Okay, cost element in controlling. Now, when you post a transaction in 4 lakhs GL in finance, you can see a report based on this GL, what are the transactions have been posted. But if you take the same GL as a cost element in controlling, typically the balance will not sit in this cost element. It means cost elements will not hold any value independently. It will not hold any value. It requires a base. That base is nothing but cost object. Okay, it's nothing but controlling cost object, CO object, controlling object. Basically, we call it as, also we call it as cost object. So in that case, it requires a base. It means cost center. If I give a cost center, then at the time of pulling the data in controlling, I will have to enter this cost element along with the cost center in order to see my report. So independently, this GL, this cost element will not hold any value. It requires a base. That base is nothing but controlling object, cost object. So without the cost object, we cannot pull the data. We cannot post any data. Okay. So now let's say, I mean, not only the cost center, WBS, sales order, production order, internal order, all these are called cost object. When you enter multiple cost objects, one will be considered as a real object, the other will be considered as a statistical object. That we will discuss during our internal audit discussions. We can post multiple objects as well, but among them only one will be considered as a real object. Remaining all will be considered as statistical objects. So what criteria, which is considered as base first, that we will discuss during that time. Okay, now I've, I'm posting a transaction for this GL. This is nothing but a cost element considering this cost center. Now this is our cost center. Okay, this is our cost center. Now typically in our business scenario, we have different objects like, you know, I have these many objects. Let's say I have COPA also, profitability analysis, profitability segment. I have production order. I have internal order, and I have cost center. I've posted a value into this cost element using this cost center. Now I want to move the value from cost center to profitability segment, or I want to move the value from cost center to this internal order, or from here to here. In order to move the value from one object to the other object, we require secondary cost elements. It means we cannot post any transaction directly to the secondary cost element, either in finance. Of course, in controlling, we cannot post any transaction. So we cannot post any transaction in finance. That's the first thing. And second thing is secondary cost element will act like carriers. It means the value of the cost center will take from here and put it over here, or from here to here, or here to here. It is just a cost carrier. It takes from one place, dumps into the other place. That's it. It does not hold any value, just like primary cost element. But whereas in the case of primary cost elements, if we consider cost object, at least you can see some value. But secondary cost elements will never ever hold any value, even if you consider the secondary cost, I mean the controlling object, cost objects. Even if you consider cost objects, you will never hold any value in the case of secondary cost elements. Got it? Any questions? Okay.
Nanda,
Yes.
the primary cost element does carry the value or it does not? Primary cost element, or
It can, it
it
will have, that's what I said. This 4 lakhs is a cost element, but it will not have a value individually.
okay
It requires a base. That
base.
base is nothing but cost object. It can be anything: cost center, internal order, production order, or profitability segment.
What about the
But
profit
it
center?
requires, profit center is not considered as a true cost object. Profit center will never be considered. Typically, in a way, what I can say is profit center is not part of controlling.
Okay,
Profit center is something relating to finance.
okay, all right.
Typically, profit center is not considered as a cost object.
Okay, it's not a controlling object. Okay,
Hmm.
okay,
Okay, so that's about the primary cost element and secondary cost element. So let me show you the creation of secondary cost element. Then FS00. Yeah, before we get into that, we need a account group for it. Account group, it means we need to have in our GL accounting master data, GL accounts, preparations. Here we have created this account group, define account group. So we need one account group for secondary cost element. So what is the range that you want to consider? What is the range that you want to consider for this secondary cost element? That we will have to enter here. Okay, so I don't know whether we have created, let's do that. So IMG, financial accounting, general ledger accounting, master data, GL accounts, preparations, and define account groups. Just execute. I think ours is 1248 only. Let's see that. Chart of accounts is of course 1248, but account group, what are the account groups? Yes. Share capital, reserves, other liabilities, other assets, incomes, fixed assets, expenses, current assets. But we don't have anything for the secondary cost elements. So what we will do, we will create this thing. Okay, I'm going into new entries. 1248 is our chart of accounts. So secondary cost elements, right? Secondary cost elements are SEC, secondary cost elements. Okay, what I will do, I'll say 9 lakh to 9,99,000. Okay, 9,99,999. Save it.
so Nanda, don't we require to create account group for cost primary cost element?
All these are primary cost elements only, right?
Okay.
These are all primary cost elements. If you see over here, expenses, incomes, these two are primary cost elements only,
Or GL account, okay. These are
right?
G
GL account is considered
the
as a primary cost
primary.
element.
Okay,
That is
okay,
based on the cost element category.
okay.
Okay,
All
so
right.
we have got a separate group for secondary cost elements. This is the new concept in S4.
Oh, yeah.
This was not there in earlier versions, I mean until ECC. Okay, meaning,
So, okay. So sorry to disturb you, but bother you. One more question. So when we create a GL account, so primary cost element is automatically created.
no, that will not be created automatically. So here
Uh-huh.
expenses while creating, here in control data,
Mhm.
we used to enter the cost element category. We used to enter this manually. We used to enter this manually 0, 1, okay, 11, sales direction. We used to enter these things manually. It does not create automatically.
Okay. In a ECC 6.0, there was an options where we have to just they ask whether you
Give a
want to.
range. We can give a range 4 lakh to 4 lakh 99. We can give a range and we can enter a default cost element category. So based on that, what used to happen is it used to adapt. But this field was not here in the control data. On the top, you need to have one field,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes,
You
yes,
used to see one
yes,
field, cost element category, cost element or something, edit cost element or something.
yes. That
That
is what I was
when you
coming
used
over.
to when you used to select that, you used to get one pop-up where you used to enter this cost element category.
Right,
So
right,
in
right.
ECC, we used to enter a range of GLs for specific cost element category, then its system used to pick up that accordingly. But that is not the case in secondary cost element because
Oh,
we may have cost elements along with non-cost elements also.
okay.
So because of that, if you see over here in the GL account to type, you have non-operating expenses and incomes also. Typically in this case, you're not going to give any cost element category.
So when can you use the non-operating expense or?
We have already used in one case.
Okay,
During our asset accounting, we have considered that part.
okay.
Okay, so that's about this thing. Now, so at the time of creating the GL, we used to enter here in the control data, we used to enter this cost element category. This
Mm,
is in the case of expenses, and in the case of incomes, if you see over here, we'll find 11.
okay.
Okay, that's about the cost element category. Now, how do we create the secondary cost element? It's going to be the same. There is no change. Okay, now let me create a secondary cost element. I mean, basically it requires a GL. So let me create a GL for this. I will say 9,41,000. Okay, company code is the same. What I will do here, I will have to enter secondary cost. The moment I consider a secondary cost, you will find the categories accordingly. Now, what is the account group? Account group is the secondary cost elements. Where is that secondary cost element? One second. I'll go back again, come in. Okay, so what I will do, I will just take 9,41 and here secondary cost elements. Here I will enter the secondary cost. Okay, I will say here admin overheads. Okay, admin overheads, control data. Here it's the same. Only the thing is here you will have to enter. Why did I enter 41? 9 is common and the next two digits are important. Why I'm saying 41? Because on seeing on seeing this cost element, I will immediately I will understand whether this is something relating to overheads or something relating to assessment or something relating to activity or something relating to settlement. I will understand based on the second and third digit of the GL account. So 41 is for overhead rates. So just I'm selecting the same thing. If this was something relating to activity type, I would have considered 943,000. So that way, easily you can recognize the particular GL, whether it is a overhead, or activity type, or assessment, or something else. Now, if you see here, since we have selected here as a secondary cost, here secondary cost, we have selected a secondary cost. In the control data, you would not be able to see primary cost category, cost element categories. You see here, internal settlement, projects, overheads, assessment, activity. These are something relating to projects. Okay, so we have a new cost element category, reporting cost element COPA. I really don't know about it, but we got a new one. Okay, so I will figure that out in the meantime. So these are all the different secondary cost element categories. Okay, I've picked up 41. So here, since it says as a 41 overhead related, based on this, I will understand that this cost element is something relating to secondary cost element overheads. I will understand that easily. Okay, I'm just saving. Now, the in the create bank interest field status group, we have a separate field status group for secondary cost elements. If not, I think we have a standard one. I'm not sure. If not, we will have to create. Yeah, this is the secondary cost element. So in this case, you will find all of them as an optional. So let me go and show you that. So just double click on that. It will take you to the same place. OBC4, OBC4, I think. OBC4 or something. I don't remember exactly.
I think it's obviously 4, yeah.
Yeah, OBC4. OBD4 for this account group. Yeah, that's the same. OBD4 for account groups. Okay. So when you go here in the, you can go directly from there using the SPRO path, or you can select the transaction code in the SPRO path. You can see the same thing here in our financial accounting global settings, ledgers, field status, fields here. You can see assign field status variant. This is the one. You can select either from here or OBD4, OBC4, or you can directly double click here. It will take you to the same place. Now, if you see over here, you cannot find any field as a required. All of them kept in the optional mode. That's the that's the part in the case of secondary cost elements. You can see all of them in the optional mode. Okay, you may see some fields as suppressed, but typically as per the standard, it has to be a optional field. All fields must be in optional. That is the basic difference. So we have a separate field status group. We can go ahead and use the same thing. Okay, just to save it, we got a secondary cost element. Now, if I want to post transaction to this, system will not allow me to do that. I'm going into a B50. Let me take a transaction. I will say 2,20,000 credit debit. I will say 1,000 and let me enter the profit center directly because these two are not cost elements. I mean the expenses. So I will say profit center directly. Now it says does not exist in SKB1. It is not there in SKB1. In SKB1, you can see only the primary cost elements. Okay, so it will not allow. I, I think there should be another error also. It gives, I don't remember exactly the name of the error, the description of the error, but that's fine. So skb1 is basically skb1 skb1. You have ska1 skb1 ska1 for chart of accounts GLs. If at all you have any chart of, if you maintain any GLs at chart of accounts level, you would be able to see all of them here. Okay, these are all maintained at the chart of accounts level. And skb1 at company code level, you can see now company code 1248, and just execute. Now you would not be finding that here in this 941 we have here. Hello?
Yes. Hello? Hello? बोलते तो खरा हमने बोलते तो खरा हेलो
Nanda?
हेलो I think George,
Yes, sir.
I
Hello?
think he must have been disconnected.
Maybe. Because
Oh, so he says send the invitation, give me minutes. Lost the connection. Okay, he replied that lost the connection.
oh, okay.
He said, give him a minute, he will be back.
Hey, Naresh, how are you?
Okay, George, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Naresh. Everything good?
Yes, sir. So far, I'm enjoying my new job.
Okay, that's great, bro.
And
Beautiful.
by the way, I'm flying to Los Angeles.
Really?
Yes, for a 1 week only. Company is,
Oh,
providing all the airfare, tickets, hotel, car, everything, just for a 1 week, to see the clients.
that's it. Okay. Yeah, you come back again.
I'm going on Sunday 3rd November and coming back on 8th.
Oh,
No, 9th.
that's good, man.
Yeah.
So become a pro.
I'm trying to.
After this, we should be, after this training, we should be professional, at least to some certain stage, anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm just battling with my, I don't know. Oh, it's back.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, Nanda.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there is some connectivity issue. Okay, so basically it is saying as it does not have skb1, but still you're finding the same thing. Now the point here is it is a secondary cost element, and normally system should not allow us to post the transaction, but the information is giving in a different way. Let me try and post in another way. I will take both debit and credit with the same GL. So take credit here, debit here, and let me say 1000 here, 1000 here. I'll take profit center. it is not allowing us to do that. Input value must be defined in SKB on the value or values are not specified in this table. Check whether input is correct if necessary. This is not incorrect entry. Check the system settings and change them. If there is a connection customizing setting, you can maintain the same. It is not giving the right information, but basically it says as it is not a cost element or something.
So
Not sure.
does that mean that this has not been created in company code level? Or
No, it is created, it is there in the company code itself. Here, this is our company code
okay.
1248.
But the error message, it's showing the wrong. It should not be said that, it's not exist in SKB1.
No, no, yeah, one second. Secondary cost element, where is that? Oh, we have created that, but what happened to it? Let me just do it once again. So let me just see now. Okay. Yeah, secondary cost element we have now. So let us see now what it says. FS, sorry, FB50. I'm just entering 9 lakh 40, 2 lakh 20, credit debit, taking amount, taking the profit center. Okay, now let's see what it says. Yeah, this is what the actual error. Cost element 941,000 in controlling area 1248 for this date cannot be posted with primary costs. This is what the actual error message. Okay, so cost element in this will not be posted, will not be considered for posting. That is the meaning of it. So since it is a secondary cost element, so we cannot post any transaction to the secondary cost element. But if you want to consider 4 lakhs, it will allow you to post the data. But it requires a CO object. Now system will allow us to post the data. Someone made some changes in the tolerance thing. Tolerance groups here for employees 1248 we have, but what happened to it?
Nanda, I see the company code as 1284.
1284 is the other one, but what I've created for our intercompany related thing.
Okay.
So this 1248, the transaction we are posting in 1248. Oh, sorry, 1284 here, but still 1284 has this thing, right? Let us see. I'm just changing to a company code 1248. Okay, let me just select the same one once again. Taking the amount. Okay, I will say profit center. Now system will not allow me to post. This is the error message it gives me. So if I say 4 lakhs, then You can see no amount of tolerance entered for 120. Tolerance employee group for employees. It's already there. Okay, I think it. So what I'll do, I'll delete this part completely. Okay, now I'm going back, posting the transaction. 4 lakhs I'm taking, 2,20,000 credit debit. Okay, now if I enter cost center here, and it will allow me to post the data. Value field, I will say 25th September. That's it. It will allow me to post. That's it. But the moment I consider the secondary cost element, it will stop me to post, because we cannot post transactions directly to a secondary cost element. Secondary cost elements are just carriers, take the values from one object to the other object. Got it? Any questions?
So we cannot use the secondary cost. We cannot use secondary cost element for posting MVC.
Yes. Yes.
It will take value from the cost center from bookkeeping.
Yes. Yeah. From one object, it will take the values from one object, pushes into the other object.
Okay.
So that is what basically the secondary cost element is.
And
Okay.
sometimes, yeah. And sometimes, we need to just understand, like, especially, when we do the distributions and assessment cycle,
Mm-hmm.
when to use distribution cycle and when to use the assessment cycle.
So
Yeah.
there is
So
no
that
logic in that. There is no
uh-huh.
logic in that, but we will discuss them.
Okay.
There is
All
no
right.
logic. What cases we will have to use distribution, what cases we'll have to use periodic reposting,
Reposting.
and when, in what cases we will have to use assessment.
Okay.
That there is no logic in it, but
Okay.
we will discuss. I mean, we will discuss what exactly the concept.
Okay.
Okay, that's about today's session.